All right. Uh, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yay! Woo! Ah, oh my gosh, that was stressful. Holy crap. That was really stressful. All right, we're going to end up going a little bit later because, like, we're like, what do you mean there's no sound? Oh, oh my gosh, that was nuts. All right. Yay. We have sound. I'm really excited about that. So I'm gonna have to, like, since you guys can't read lips, or maybe some of you can, I can't. I'm gonna just mention everything I mentioned in the beginning. Anyway, hopefully I'm gonna start out with some of the questions that were submitted here on this feed. And then if we have time, I'll go back and answer questions that were pre-submitted because those are there for just in case nobody has questions. So we'll do that if we have time. But I try to do these. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying this. I've been enjoying these. I do them. I'm trying to do them like every week or so. But this last week I didn't do it because I was in a study. I was mentioning I was in a study at Texas Tech, which was super cool. So that's the reason why I didn't have one last week because I was trying to get ready to go and everything. And it was actually a really, really cool study. They're trying to figure out what component of the human scent profile area search dogs are working off of. And Robin was a part of the first rev that they did, which was focused on disaster dogs. And they found out that the dogs were actually working off of human breath, and that was put out in a paper and stuff like that. And they were wondering, well, what about area dogs? Area dogs are, it's not uncommon to get an odor at least a quarter of a mile out, and then they're like, well, could it really be breath? Could it be something else? So we participated in that study. So that was really kind of cool. So anyway, that's why we didn't have it last week. So now we'll get started on questions. Sorry about the delay, guys. I'm really glad you guys have sound because I was rushing to get here because I was picking up my vehicle. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll start at the top. So, question: do some dogs just have better noses than other dogs? Please feel free to. Oh, it's not too basic at all. Do some dogs have better noses? They seem to. I think some dogs are, just like people. Like some people have certain talents better than others. I know I don't have a really good sense of smell personally, for instance, and I don't have very good eyesight either. I'm wearing reading glasses right now. I still got contacts in, so every dog's an individual. Every human's an individual. I would say some dogs do have better noses. There's also some dogs have more drive to utilize that nose. Now, keep in mind that we're also dealing with, when we're working with nose work odor, that's big odor, right? Those hides, I mean, the human nose can smell it, right? When we're thinking about dogs and what dogs can smell, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, they can smell out, little SD cards, like for the, electronics detection. They can smell cancer. They've got a new thing now. They can smell like water leaks down in the ground to detect stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like even with the smelliest stuff, which is like human remains, they can tell the difference between human remains and animal remains. Like it's kind of amazing what their noses can smell and what they can differentiate. So I would say though, for nosework odor, every dog can smell nosework odor. However, that said, and this is why the question is not too basic, it's actually a great question. There's also a point of odor threshold and where you train your dog. So if we kind of think about our dogs, right? Oh, this is a good example. We'll have like a little measuring tape. And we'll just say, this is like 16 inches right here. Actually, we'll go to 18. All right, so 18 inches. So let's say this 18-inch measuring tape right here, this is 18 inches, right to there, right, is kind of like, if we say that is what, from the lowest concentration of odor that our dogs are searching to say the strongest hides that our dogs are searching, right, for essential oil. And so now if you're doing like AKC, for instance, we know it's really strong. It's going to be kind of around over here. NACSW is probably more like over here. You can actually go even lighter than that if you wanted to. And so really what we're doing is we're asking our dogs to kind of search within a portion of the concentration profile. Some of our dogs, we want our dogs to be able to search a really high end. Some of our dogs, maybe we want them to search a really low end. But what's interesting is that depending upon what we are, what we're actually searching, and or what we're training on, that's going to condition our dog. So if we condition our dog, if we're only ever searching here at the high end, right? If we're only ever searching at the high end of the concentration and our dog encounters something down here, they may ignore it because it may not register as important. Okay, so and now if you think about it, even if you are working a very high concentration, now let's say that you've got wind and that hide is blowing farther away from the hide, it may be over here, right? So our dogs still may not respond to it until they get closer if you only work that high concentration. So it's not about whether or not dogs, one dog can smell birch or not, right? It's really about what odor threshold, what concentration are you sensitizing and conditioning your dog to? So even for folks who are trialing primarily in AKC, so that'd be on the high end of the concentration, I still encourage those folks to train down here also. And the reason is I want them sensitized enough that if they are farther away from the hide, the dog will respond to it. Now, granted, I may not want them down here. Not really nobody really goes down here. Like I can actually, I have taken my dog's odor threshold way down. And then I'm like, I think my dog's getting a little fringy because now my dog is starting to respond to lower amounts of odor than is practical. And at that point, I'm actually complicating the picture for them. Right? So now they're starting to get stuck in odor pools that normally they wouldn't have even noticed. So we want to try to be a little bit logical about this. So we want to try to see, like, so for instance, if you trial up here, maybe search to down here. Train on some of those NACSW Q-tips if you trial only in AKC. That's fine. So let's say you're trialing in NACSW. Let's say you're trialing right around here. I would also go up. And the reason is I would also increase the concentration, right? To maybe the stronger hides. That way, when my dog gets into a massive odor pool, which can happen, maybe they'll have a little bit more understanding about how to work it. Am I going to go lighter? Yeah, I am, because I still want them to go below their standard odor threshold. So maybe I may put out 1 Q-tip, right? As opposed to 3. So I can start to kind of work them along the odor threshold. So that question, although I don't know if that probably wasn't the actual question you were asking, has a really valid conversation around it. So that was really cool. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, so now Laura has a question. Can you talk more about the NW3 mindset? I have 2 NW3 titles and need 1 more for my NW3 Elite. I'm in a trial on September 6th. I feel like we're really ready. Any insights? Welcome. If you're ready, it's going to happen. It's one of these things where the hard part is that trying to get that last title, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we don't need to. And, it's one, excuse me, it's one of those things where we're feeling the extra pressure, like, oh, we want to go out, we want to get that title. And we talked a lot on the last live about going in from a process mindset, not an outcome mindset, because when you have that title on the line, it's really hard. And this also goes for our summit folks, right? Because it's the same type of deal where you're like you gotta perform a certain compared to everybody else. It's really hard, right? And you can feel pressure like, oh, well, so-and-so came out of that search looking pretty happy, like, and that can put that same amount of pressure, right? So it's very similar. You're like, oh, I don't want to miss one hide, or like, oh, I think I missed a hide over there, and I only need a leg, but and then you can put a lot of pressure on. And what I would say is when it's going to happen. And, it's kind of one of these things where when it happens, it happens. And if you go in and you maintain that same mindset of, one search at a time, breathe in, breathe out before you call alert, so you don't get the alert vomit going on, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And you know what? Just try to enjoy it. Try to enjoy the moment. You only get NW3 Elite once in that dog's career. Enjoy the moment. That's probably my best advice there. Absolutely. And how to not overthink things and how to stay out of your head. Well, keep in mind your NW3 Elite title is no harder than your first NW3 title. The level is the level. I'm hearing a lot of barking out in the kennel. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, the level is the level. And you still want to be thinking, I'm going to go in and assume no odor. And you still want to be thinking, take each search on its own, and then you'll be fine. Absolutely. So with the follow-up question to the first one, how much does natural ability versus training impact success in nose work? They both are a component. Natural ability goes into the drives. First of all, how naturally motivated is your dog? Number one. And number two, what kind of natural hunt drive does your dog have? So when your dog goes out to seek something, how much of that there is a little bit of genetic, there is a genetic component of that. You're going to have some dogs that just really love the hunt. And those dogs, when you couple that with a good nose and when they're biddable and they want to try to work for the handler, so it's not just like I've got high hunt drive for cookies. No, we have high hunt drive for Birch because I'm going to get my reinforcement. All of these things definitely comes into play. The training is huge. Yes, your dog has a lot of natural ability, but by doing training, by placing our hides in ways that we can shape the dog's expectations, they become a lot more. This is one of the ways that training impacts it, is that they actually become a lot more efficient. Because they may work in areas that are going to be more potentially highly productive. The other thing is that when we set out hides, what we're actually doing is we're educating the dogs through scent theory. Our dogs can search and sniff naturally. But when we set a hide based upon that challenge, what they start to do is they learn how to problem solve, and they're practicing the problem solving. That's when they start to learn how that particular odor starts to behave. Every odor behaves differently. Whether you're looking for, essential oil, human remains, live human, narcotics, explosives, like everything, all the odors behave differently because the odors have different properties. Some of the odors produce odors. Some plumes are a lot bigger, some a lot smaller. Some are more buoyant, some drop more. And just depending upon the type of odor that you're dealing with, it's going to behave differently. Food odor behaves very differently than essential oil, for example, right? So these are things to kind of think about. And then when you set the hide's going to behave in the way that it behaves based upon what you're setting. And in our case, essential oil is going to loft. It's got a high vapor pressure. It's going to get big. It's going to go up. It's going to loft. And so then basically what we're doing is we're teaching the dog how to problem solve that kind of odor. And they become experts at the scent theory for that odor. And that's why the training is really important. That's why getting out and training is essential. The other part of it is understanding how to work with the human, right? That's the other piece of it. This is where making sure that you have the right engagement, making sure you have a dog that comes engaged to the start line. And it's a cooperative sport, right? Learning how to work as a teammate, that sort of thing. So all of these parts of things with the training really kind of come together. Then, of course, there's the handler, because you can have the most talented dog in the world. You've still got to handle the dog, right? You still got to handle the dog. You still got to read the dog. You still got to get through the search area. And that, the emphasis on that changes over the levels. And to the point where you have really, there's a whole lot more pressure on the handler at the upper levels, because now at this now they have to start interpreting airflow. You have to start thinking about, have you found all the hides? Have you cleared the whole area? You're paying attention to the dog, you're paying attention to the scent theory, you're paying attention to the area, and you're starting to put those pieces together. So it's not even just the training of the dog, the handler is a huge part of it. Okay. Kim says, how do you bring out drive and motivation in dogs that are low confidence? Is that something that can be done, or is it purely genetic? It absolutely can be done. I look at my dog Y, who's he's 14 now, so he's kind of retired, but very low confidence dog. Initially, he's not anymore. I had to build his confidence. But what's interesting is that confidence and motivation work like this, right? They're like gears. And if you increase motivation, you increase confidence. And they kind of work like that, right? But let's say you decrease motivation or you decrease confidence, you're going to decrease the other and go back down again. So you've got to, so that you want to really kind of pay attention to both of those things. And so if you have a dog that's low confidence, you want to build up motivation. And the way I do it is, and this is the way I did this with Y, is I would take him to a lot of new places, set a basic hide, then reinforce the heck out of it. I mean, we had like a massive party, one hide. Then put him in the car and I'd go somewhere else. And what happens is that he started to realize, this is fun. I get paid a lot. Mom's really happy. And it built his confidence. And the reinforcement built the motivation. So the two things together really kind of helped out. And it also takes a little bit of time. It takes time because you can't push these dogs. The more you push, the worse it's going to get. If the dog, you have to kind of give the dog an opt out, for these low confidence dogs, right? You can't force it. If they say no, you kind of gotta go with it, that's really important. So, the other thing is that it's going to take longer. It takes a longer time for them to kind of learn how to settle and really get comfortable. And you've got to be sometimes okay with taking some time off if you need it. But as far as building motivation, like, can these lower confidence dogs get really motivated? Oh, heck yes. I mean, it got to the point where it's the funniest thing. Like my mini Aussie, who used to be, I'm like, oh, wow, buddy, he really environmentally sensitive, got to the point at the end of his elite career, he would be barking and staging. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? I'd have to put that little guy in a down to keep him from barking. He was that excited. So you want to talk about motivation? He was so excited about going into search. He was barking in the staging area. And I'm like, we can't do this, sweetheart. It was like this brand new problem that he developed in the last year of his trialing. I'm like, you know what? I love it. I love the fact that he was wanting to do that. So in that case, and he came out his very last elite search ever in his career. He won. He won first place in that search. So it can happen, but you got to go slow, and you got to kind of edge up the motivation that edges up the confidence. And then you edge up the motivation that edges up the confidence. So that's how it works. All right. I am glad that everybody can hear me again, which is wonderful. And seeing all these comments about, thought I was losing my mind. Nope. It's just me. All right. But I'm so glad everybody can hear me now. Kim says, what's next after NW 120? Do you offer classes or workshops, anything in between, like confidence building exercises for nose work? Yes. I do workshops online. I don't have any on the schedule right now, but NW, what am I teaching next term? I know I'm doing 101. I always try to do a class kind of in between, a class that the 120s can follow up on. And if I look at the schedule, I'm just going to quick take a look at that. So if I look at the schedule, I would say if you're in NW 120 right now, I would take a look at NW200, which would be Are You Trial Ready? And it's trial preparation for nosework teams. That's going to actually be probably a good class for you guys. We're going to get into adding new odors, working on threshold hides. If you have a problem with their behavior at source, like for instance, box smashing, doing your odor strength that we were talking about, how to use a walkthrough at a trial, really, cleaning up your multiple hides, which we will be getting into at the end of it 120. Some common hide placements, how to get your routine ready, how to, potentially do blind hides and all that sort of thing. So all of that will be in NW 200, and I would definitely take that after 120 next term. All right. So all right. So we have a question. Don't see my question. Apologies if this is a repeat. How do you build a dog's stamina for searches as you go up the levels of trialing? Well, what I'm doing is actually more rather than building stamina, I'm building capability. Some in some cases the dog does have to build a little bit of nose time. Which I think is more like I don't really know if it's a stamina thing, because honestly, probably the level that requires the most stamina, other than Summit. Summit requires an immense amount of stamina because you have 8 searches over 2 days, and some of them are big, or they're really short times, that kind of thing. It is hard, and it's emotional stamina too. I think NW3 probably requires the most stamina because you're doing 6 searches. That could mean in and out of the car 6 times because you don't know if you're going to be doing some back-to-back stuff. So, I think that's actually, I think that's the one that requires the most stamina. But what you may need to do is develop a little bit more nose time. And for nose time for a nose work dog is different than for a working dog. For a working dog, for nose time, and it depends on what they do for work. For Prize, she's an area search dog, so maybe she's got to go 45 minutes, an hour before finding her subject, maybe, or longer, or whatever. But in nose work, we're dealing with different time. Maybe we go 3 minutes, right? That can be a long time if like your dog is used to finding a hide in 1 minute. And the reason why I'm saying that's not because 3 minutes is a long time. It's because dogs have an inner clock. And that inner clock can kind of set them off a little bit, right? So they can be like, you know what? I always find a hide in a minute. It's been 3 minutes. What am I doing wrong? And then you get a false alert. So, it's one of those things where you have to, so it's not so much the stamina, it's building the nose time. And the way that you can do that is think about your airflow and think about your search area size. You don't have to search a huge, you can build nose time by doing blank areas, like a larger blank area and clearing it purposefully. The other is, let's say you figure out which way the wind is blowing. And even if it's not a very big area, you set the hide so that the hide is blowing the other direction. And you have to clear the area before you get to that. That could mean that your dog has to work a little bit longer before they encounter odor. That can help build some of that nose time. So you want to kind of think about that in terms of just, try to build up to like 3 minutes when they find a first hide. I think that's actually a really good goal. That would definitely prepare you for the upper levels. Or, you find a hide after 3 minutes and then you try to set a larger area, and then they've got to go to another minute before finding another hide. So you can kind of space out your hides that way. And then you go maybe another minute and you find another hide, and then 3 minutes and you find the last hide. So when you think about it, 6, 7, that's 8 minutes right there. But you're breaking it up so that they're having some variability in the amount of time that they're working before they find a hide. You could definitely do that. Let's see. Kim says, do you personally train odor threshold like how you described? Do you shift from strong, medium, and low odors? Yes, I do. Sometimes when I'm setting hides, I purposefully set a weaker hide. Sometimes when I'm setting hides, I purposefully set a stronger hide with maybe more Q-tips or maybe prepared a little bit differently. So I have, although my odor kit's kind of a mess right now, I got to clean that up. But what I usually try to do is I separate out my odor, my pre-made hides in based upon the like I actually make up different batches of Q-tips. So I may have like strong Q-tips and weaker Q-tips based upon how many Q-tips I put in versus how much oil and that kind of thing. And then if I have that, then I'll make up hides that some are just use the stronger Q-tips and some use the weaker Q-tips. And I kind of keep track of that. I actually use little colored dots, like stickers, and I use that to try to kind of color code. So like, like the purple would mean one thing, blue's another. So that way when I pull the hides, I put them back in the right spot. I know how strong my odor is. I know what odor I put out. So that's how I would do that. Let's see. Deborah says, how can I help my dog drive to source versus hitting on a fringe, especially when he's nervous? I think you asked about, did you ask about the sensitive dog? I think, was it you that asked about the sensitive dog? I know there was one in here. I thought you did. No, that was Kim. I think. I don't know. Okay. Okay, when he's nervous, drive to source versus hitting on a fringe. So I don't like to think in terms of trialing. I try to think in terms of training. And if I have a dog that is hitting on fringe and needs to learn to drive to source, I'd be doing a lot of what I call 3D hides. So those are hides where the dog really has to push in. So as an example, something kind of like the underside of a bleacher. I wouldn't make it too deep in the beginning. Something where, it's not right on the edge of the underside. It's just slightly under or something like that, where you start to give the dog a challenge in sourcing and something to problem solve with a little bit of a three-dimensional type of or depth type of component. Deep accessible hides are a great way of doing that. Like a lot of, really working those deep accessible, not deep inaccessible, but deep accessible, meaning they push in, they can actually get to the hide. You set hides like that, your dog's going to get better at sourcing. And when they do that, make sure you really up that reinforcement, right? So I have a dog that she doesn't get nervous, but she does kind of make split decisions or snap decisions, right? Brava, she can get a little fringy. And what I have to do with her is I have to be very careful with her criteria. And then when she gets to source in training, I do a single hide. If I can, I try to make it three-dimensional, where it's kind of a deep hide. And then I'm reinforcing with a ball. Something that for her is actually even higher than food. So I tried it and I make a huge party out of it. That can help to eliminate some of that fringing. Okay. Here's a question. Is it possible to use a reinforcer that's too high value or too stinky that affects the dog's ability to find the next hide in a multiple hide search? Yes, it is. Because if the dog is too insane over your reinforcer, they're going to have a hard time focusing. And it can definitely happen. One of the things you need to make sure you're doing is not trying out a new reinforcer at a trial. Like sometimes people are like, oh, I'll try this at a trial. And they bring out steak and the dog's never had steak. And the dog's like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. Or hot dog or something. And they've never used it as for nose work. And now the dog is like so like keyed in on the pocket where they're like all of a sudden alerting all over the place in order to get the food. You definitely want to practice with it first. But or what you could do is have that stinky food and save it for the last hide. Have something not quite so crazy, stinky, amazing for the first hide and just have it for the last hide. I'd probably do that, and then have a party because parties rock. Let's see. It looks like we got through. Would 200 be good for Beamer? He has his NW1. Yes, I do think it would be good for Beamer. Absolutely. I think it'd be a good class for him. Okay. I think we've gone about a half an hour now, especially considering we had a little bit of a late start. So I'm probably going to um wrap it up now. And we will try to table. I know we've got a lot of the pre-submitted questions and need to make sure we get back to those. And so it's good we have something to start from. Need to make sure I just put those in like a document or something and keep like a running list. That sounds like a good idea. Maybe I should do that. And then basically, from there we could pick from those. And I'm gonna be back in New Jersey next week. Crazy. Yeah, I hope we can do the live next week because I'm going to be driving back. Yeah, I should be able to. It's going to be tight. Be driving back on Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to be home. I haven't been home since, oh gosh, mid-March. Nuts. Crazy. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks again. I'm so glad we also figured out the volume thing. That was kind of nuts. So yeah, you weren't you weren't imagining it. There was no volume in the beginning. I just closed out, got back in. Somebody said, get out, get back in again. And you're like, whoa, hey, that actually worked. So anyway, thanks again, guys. Don't forget these are recorded. So if you want to go back and listen to the previous episodes, feel free. They're on my YouTube channel. And I will talk to you later. All right. Bye, guys.